My name is Jessie Ace. I'm part of a group of ENabled Warriors that you've probably never heard of. We're fighting back against our invisible illness and taking the dis out of disability. We don't give sympathy to our symptoms. They enable us to be the warrior that we are. If you ask doctors and nurses, they'd say what we're doing is impossible. But pushing the limits of our conditions is something that we have to break through every single day. So we push the limits. We are mentally strong, and we can do anything. The question is, how far can we push those limits? This podcast will give you the answers. I'm Jessie Ace, and this is the Disabled to Enabled podcast. Enabled Warriors, welcome back to part 2 of our interview with today's guest. We've just spoken about their diagnosis. If you missed it, make sure to go back and have a listen. In this section, we'll have a chat about the amazing things that today's guest has done since their diagnosis. Hey Enabled Warriors, welcome back. We are here with Daralyse Lyons. So exciting. We are talking today about mental health and bulimia and so many awesome things. In this section, we're going to cover the amazing things that Daralyse has done since, well, just everything that happened. My goodness. Okay, so let's get straight in. So you are an author, an actress, a yogi, and transformational coach, speaker, and podcast host. How on earth did you get to all of these different things? And when did you decide that this was what you had to do? Was it affected by your eating disorder at all? Like, how did it all start?
Yeah. So I think what I realized, and such great questions, I realized when I got into recovery that what I was truly hungry for was a soul level hunger, right? Like it had nothing to do with food, but my soul and my spirit wanted meaning and connection and love and creativity. And I always, when I was a little kid, Jessie, like I used to get in trouble. Other kids would get in trouble for staying up late. And like, I don't know what they would be doing, staying up late, maybe playing video games. And I would get in trouble for staying up late and like reading under the covers and, writing stories. And then I used to just make things up as a little kid. Like I had this vivid imagination and I would put on plays and all these things. And I really lost that for a long time when I was in my active eating disorder. I felt very cut off from my creativity. I felt very cut off from like the soul nourishing work that I do now. And then when I got into recovery, I had been working in a job in finance, which is not like, I'm not a financial person. I am not knocking it for anyone who is, but like I am lit up by words and literature and I can't do math without a calculator. Like I'm just not, a finance person. And so when I got into recovery, I started to really explore the things that I loved to do and to start to I realized that if my life felt empty, I would eventually go back to trying to fill whatever voids there were with food. And so, I just started to explore writing and I wrote I think it was my second book. I'd written one book earlier on in my life when I was still in the eating disorder, but it took a long time and I kind of picked it up and put it back down based on where I was and whether I was in recovery. But yeah, like when I was 26, I started to just write a lot. And then I got into comedy improv and yoga had been part of my healing journey. So I continued that. And I feel like I just have been letting myself say yes to my hungers and my desires. And that has led to creating a really amazing life where I do a lot of things that I love.
That's incredible. And it's great to hear as well that something so positive can come from such a kind of really difficult kind of space. That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that a lot of people, I'm not unique in that, I think that eating disorders, they are about food, but they're also not about food, right? They're about these deeper issues. And I know a lot of people who, when they got into recovery, just really started to realize like some of the unmet needs and wants and desires in their life. And so to take up various things, whether it be creative or like work-wise or, just because I think when you get a second chance at life, you really want to live it.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. It's amazing. And so you're now working as a transformational coach as well. I mean, that's incredible. That's like that's actually what I want to do further down the line. That's really cool. What does
Really?
that mean? So what does being a transformational coach mean to you, and who do you help?
Yeah, so to me, it means that I work with people to get very clear on their vision and their values. And
Mm,
that has to come from them, right? Like I can't tell someone else what's going to inspire them, but I can help them excavate their inner being and their soul and their desires. And so once we do that, once I help someone get really clear on their vision and their values for their life, then we figure out what's in the way of them living that vision and living that life. And we work to, on the one hand, remove any barriers, and on the other hand, kind of help them move forward towards what they want. And so most of the work that I do in that space, I have done some like group trainings and those kinds of things, but most of the work that I do tends to be one-on-one, and it's very individualized and exploratory and so fulfilling because, I mean, just people are miraculous in their dreams and their goals and their visions, or every person I've worked with has been different. And I've learned something in helping them to better learn themselves.
that's lovely. That to me is like the best thing. It's just helping someone else realize, something about them. It's just phenomenal. And you mentioned you used to write stories a lot. So,
Yes.
and you mentioned as well that everyone has a story. What would be your biggest tip for anyone wanting to get that story out into the world who maybe doesn't quite have the confidence to right now?
Mm. So I would say before you can even get that story out into the world, you have to really get it down for yourself,
Yes.
right? And like capture it for yourself. So whether that looks like, some people want to tell their stories verbally. They want to get on a stage and speak their stories. Or maybe they want to have a podcast or something like that. And then other people want to write. And whatever that is, my MO has always been do something every day towards your goal, even if it's small, even if it's writing a sentence every day, right? If you want to be a writer, like just write every day and get your story down for yourself. Or again, if you want to be a podcaster, get a microphone and hook it up to your computer and just start speaking into it every day to just practice. And I think that really has to be the first step, is to start doing, just start doing something that's going to move you towards your vision. And also it will start to shift your identity, right? Like I know there are people who say, oh, I'm an aspiring writer. And my question to them is like, do you write? And if they say yes, then no, they're already a writer, right? They're not an aspiring writer anymore. To aspire to something is to want to do it and not be doing it. So the more that we can practice being a storyteller, the easier it becomes to get that story down in a format that is the format that's right for you. And then to answer the second part of your question, that is the stage, I think, after a person has begun writing, has gotten their story down, or at least the majority of their story down. That's the point to start thinking about an audience, or start thinking about, who's going to read it, or do I have the confidence to put this out into the world? Because a lot of people stop themselves from even entering into the creative process because of the fear of how people are going to receive it.
Yeah. I've heard that so many times, especially with patient advocates as well, who want to, share stories of maybe their rare illnesses or invisible illnesses, and they say things like, "Oh, people won't believe me," and this sort of thing. And I just think, my favorite quote that I keep mentioning, I seem to mention it in every episode, but my favorite quote right now is, "Nothing changes until the unspoken is said," and it's so true.
It is. And it's
You're
like there's
staring at me.
stuff I think that's unspoken within ourselves that we haven't admitted. I mean, it's like me bursting into tears at that yoga class. I just had so many things that I wasn't acknowledging to myself.
Exactly.
And it's also the unspoken in our relationships. I know a lot of people who are super, they're really unhappy in their relationships. And my question to them is, have you spoken to your partner about this? And a lot of times it's like, oh no, why would I? No, I talk to everybody but the person that, that could actually support me in making things better. Yeah, so I think it's all about, and I don't mean to trivialize it. Like, it is very challenging, I think, to acknowledge the elephant in the room. It is very challenging to talk about the things that you have fears connected to, like, well, if I say this, I might lose something. But I also think you might gain more than you ever believed possible.
1,000,000%. Yes, definitely. And the task that you mentioned earlier on as well, like it's splitting everything down and doing things little by little by little. Eventually that starts to all build up, and then before you know it, you're halfway up that mountain. You kind of look back and you go, wow, I've come a long way. This is awesome.
Yeah, well, and the way to build trust is by consistency, right? Like, nobody ever started trusting someone based on intermittent reinforcement. And that's true of our relationships with others, and that's true of our relationship with ourselves. So it's actually probably better. I mean, like, you know, I don't know, I don't have experience doing this, but my thinking is that rather than, like, let's say, sitting down once a year to write for a whole weekend, it's probably, you probably produce more, and you're probably more likely to develop the identity of a writer if you write like 5 days a week for half an hour, right? As opposed to just that once a year weekend. So I think it's about finding things that are sustainable and making choices that you can integrate into your life. I mean, we see it too with someone who wants to, like, exercise, right? If they go to the gym once for 3 hours and then burn out and feel horrible, they're not likely to go again. But if they go for like 45 minutes and do what they can, that's a way more sustainable method.
Exactly, for sure. Let's just take a short break to thank our sponsors. Enabled Warriors, do you want to win a copy of the Enabled Warrior Symptom Tracker book for free? The Symptom Tracker book will allow you to track your symptoms, instantly spot triggers, and get the best care possible from your doctors. Dr. Gretchen Hawley from the MS Link said it was brilliant for those with chronic illnesses to give their doctors more accurate information. Recalling these nuggets of information can be a game changer in receiving the best care for you and your symptoms. Inside the book, you'll find everything that you need to live your best life with chronic illness. Have you ever sat in an appointment and couldn't recall when your symptoms started, how long they lasted, the date of your first relapse, how long you've been on medication? Oh, me too. It's so annoying. That's why I made these pages in the book to help with this. Do you want to find out what foods are triggering your symptoms? Great. That's in the book too. Do you wish that you could wake up feeling positive and energetic every single day? The daily sheets in this book will help you do just that. Enter the giveaway by going to www.mybookgiveaway.com and enter your details through the message on Facebook Messenger that will pop up. If you are impatient and you want one now, then go get your Enabled Warrior Tracker book from www.enabledwarriors.org/book. Both of the links are in the show notes, so go and click them there. And get in control of your chronic illness today and start living the life you deserve. Stay enabled, warriors. Now let's get back to our guest. So, what is your best advice for keeping in a positive mindset, do you think?
So, you know, I don't actually, and this might be controversial, but I don't always believe that our mindsets are the things that are in need of shifting. And why I say that is because, like, I think there can sometimes be this need to, like, be happy all the time. And that can create, I've seen it and I felt it in myself, create this sense of, like, but something's wrong, but I'm not acknowledging it. And it can lead to, like, this feeling very split from yourself, or feeling like you can't share authentically. And so I don't generally work with people on changing their mindset, but what I work with them on is having a clear vision, having clear values. And I find that the more we live according to our vision and our values, the happier we're likely to be, and the more fulfilled we're likely to be. But also, like, you know, it doesn't mean I never have a day of feeling blue or a day of feeling like crappy, but when I do have a day of feeling crappy, I can look back over my choices that day and say, you know what, like, I really did all the things that are going to support my vision. I did all the things that, like, I lived in accordance with my values. And sometimes that's hard. Sometimes that means, like, having difficult conversations with people or doing things that don't make me feel good or positive in the moment. But yeah, like I don't really chase happiness or positivity, but I do try to always be on the path of self-actualization. And it's kind of like a back doorway into more positivity, but it really has worked for me. And I find that it works for a lot of my clients.
Yeah, no, I 100% believe that, because I mean, I wasn't talking about being positive like 24/7 and things like that, but I think so often when we have chronic illnesses and things like that, it tends to drag us down, and we kind of accept that as a new normal. So, so we kind of take those symptoms that we feel every day and we kind of let it drag us down and that sort of thing. So what I have been teaching is flipping that mindset, and rather than saying things like I'm suffering with this, flipping that on its head. Because if you say that you're suffering with something, that you're going to associate suffering with this, and then that is you, and then that is kind of internalizing all of that suffering.
Yeah. Well, and I think another piece of that is like recognizing that your identity is more than whatever you're dealing with, right? So like if you're a person who has a chronic illness or, exhibits symptoms of depression, like I struggle when someone says things like, I'm depressed or I'm a depressed person. It's like, well, no, you're a person who, yes, like one element of your life is this depression, and it might feel all consuming in this moment. And also like you're a mother, you're a friend, you're every other thing, you're a creative, you're this, you're that. Yeah. And I think that what can sometimes happen is when people get over identified with their illness. I mean, I know that this happened to me. When I first let go of bulimia, I was like, who am I without this? Who am I? Like, I think that I am everything that my symptoms are. Yeah. And so I think that too can go a long way to shifting a person's way of thinking, is if they stop like hyper associating with the symptoms, hyper associating with the disease or the, or the challenge. And it doesn't mean pretending that that's not there. It just means not letting it be the only thing that's there.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. And it was interesting what you were saying about people saying like, I am depressed and things like that. So what we tell ourselves is so, so important. If you tell yourself that you're depressed, you're going to be more depressed. If you tell yourself that you're going to be in pain, you are going to be in more pain. This is the thing. So, if you wake up every morning and you say, oh, I'm so exhausted today, then you're just going to feel more exhausted. You need to flip that mindset and get out there and do something and acknowledge it, but then kind of flip it in another way.
Yeah. And I think we started off talking about control early on. And I think that, the more that we focus on the things that are unchangeable in our lives, like if you have a chronic illness, like, I don't know. I mean, there are some people who say that can be changed. There are some people who say that can't. Like, I believe that in some cases it can be, in some cases it can't, in many cases it's somewhere in between. But, the more that you're focusing on the unchangeable factors in your life, the less likely it is that you're going to feel that sense of agency and are going to feel that sense of control. So it's like, focus on what you actually can do. And I don't just mean what you can do in relation to the illness, but like what you can do in relation to your life.
Yeah. In terms of your goals as well.
Yeah.
What can you do towards your goals every day? Oh, amazing. Right. I could talk to you about that all day. Seriously.
Yes.
But let's move on to the final question before we move into part 3. So what advice would you give to someone who is wanting to do what you do right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think I would have a question for them first, which is like, why do they want to do what I do? Right? Because I think that if they want to do what I want to do because they want to be like me, then that's not a good reason. But if they want to do what I do because they want to be themselves, then like, yes, absolutely, that's great. And so I think first I would ask like, well, what's driving you? And then whatever is driving them, like find an entry point into that. So for example, if a person's like, I really want to tell stories, I might ask them, well, how do you want to tell those stories? Like, what do you, how do you want to do that and find your voice? And maybe they'll say writing. And then, I'd have suggestions for them in that route. Or maybe they like want to be on stage. And then maybe I would make suggestions towards that. And, you know, again, if they're like, I want to work one-on-one with people, then that's a different entry point. So I think I'm big on being practical and pragmatic, and I do a lot of things, Jessie. So I think that for someone to just like try to do all the things that I do would be very overwhelming. But I came to have the life that I have really just doing one thing at a time and learning and building a sense of mastery, and then kind of moving on, integrating new things as I became more and more inspired. So I would probably try to find what lights them up, and then find an inspired set of actions that they could take like every day to build towards the goals that are right for them. And I would encourage them to find a sense of like spontaneity and experimentation, because I know that for me, my life doesn't look exactly like I thought it would look, but every time I take on a new creative endeavor, I open a door to something else. And then, you know, I'll like adopt a new skill or try something new. So I really didn't like have a plan for my life to end up here.
Enabled Warriors, please join us again in part 3 to catch the final bit of our interview with today's guest. Super quick secrets round coming up. Remember, if you've been affected by any of the issues raised in this episode, then please leave a comment and let us know what it is. And subscribe wherever you're listening so you never miss out on great stories. Warriors listening, if you've enjoyed this episode and you want to win $100, leave a review on Apple Podcasts and tell us what you liked best. We'll choose one review at random each month to win $100, and after you've left your review, remember, go and click that subscribe button. Are you ready to fight back against your chronic illness and go from being disabled to enabled? Do you want to be an enabled warrior, someone who's brave, strong, and confident, and someone who's ready to find a way to achieve awesome things despite a diagnosis? This is your invitation. Check out DISabledtoENabled.com for articles and reviews to find out how you can become enabled too. Subscribe to the podcast to always be in the know. If you think this podcast is better than sleeping in on a Sunday, tickle that subscribe or follow button wherever you're listening. And make sure to share this episode with someone who needs some inspiration. Want to ask your questions to future guests? Make sure to join our Enabled Warriors tribe on Facebook and look out for our question posts. Before we go, check out DISabledtoENabled on Instagram for posts that tell it like it is. And remember, warriors, stay enabled.